have been posted. Please make sure you check them. Um, Pay attention to your career plan grade. Some of us may not have gotten a grade for, let me just let these people in. Okay. So check your grades, pay attention to your career plan. If you turned in your career plan and you did not receive your long-term goals, rather, I'm sorry, and you did not receive a grade, I put comments in your assignment. I think probably some of the confusion may have come from people that did not attend the live session, or they didn't watch the video closely. But as a reminder, your career plan final project is 3 parts. The first part of your career plan project is setting your long-term goals. These are career goals, not personal goals. So your career goals: I want to be a master electrician within 6 years. I want to start my own business within 10 years. Not personal goals. As we've stated, the book gives examples of personal goals, and that's fine, but you are setting career goals. So your long-term goals need to be career related. If you did not set a career related goal, I sent some comments to you. Some of you may have had, semi-career goals. So I went ahead and gave you some examples of how you can create that into a career goal. Some of you, the goals were so not related to career. I told you need to call me if you need help, because I really don't have a clue what you want to do with your career. And most of us we were great, right? If you got 100 on that assignment, that means you're in the clear to go to step 2. Step 2 in week 3 will be to set your short-term goals. But before you can even get to setting your short-term goals, we have to go through this whole process that we'll talk about this week of doing informational interviewing, and you'll be doing research and all of that. So by the time that you come to week 3, you'll be in a position to do your short-term goals, which will be basically short-term steps to get you to your long-term goals. So for example, if your long-term goal was to become a master electrician in 6 years, your short-term goals are going to be things that you are going to do between now and year 6. That can be anything from graduating this program. Maybe you graduate in a year. So that's going to be your first step, to graduate this program. Maybe your second step is going to be to get a job at a small company so you can learn the ropes, and you want to do that for 2 years. And then in year 4, you're going to start studying for your master license, and then you're going to take it in year 6, right? So in week 3, you're going to be setting those incremental steps. But the reason why we don't want you to set it now is because you have to do research. You may not know what steps to take. If you want to start your own business within 10 years, you're going to have to do some research to figure out what type of steps do I need to take. Everybody's not going to have the same steps, right? So if you didn't set a long-term career goal, there's no way you're going to be able to do step 2. And then in week 4, you have to put it all together into like this summary of like an outline of how you're going to, move forward with your career. So I want to make sure everybody understands. Does everybody understand how the career project is? So you have to do the career goal. I've even, seen someone say, "Oh, I don't have any goals." Well, like, if you don't have any goals, then you're not going to pass this class, because the career goal project is 3 steps, and it's worth almost 20% of your grade. So I want to make sure we understand how that works, because it's not a assignment you can just skip. Does anyone have any questions on that? So I'm going to open that assignment back up for those of us that need to make revisions on it. And please make those revisions and turn it back in. I want to make sure you get it right so that when you do your career plan project in week 3, you'll be off to a good start. All right. All right. So please remember also that you should be setting up your mock interview and your resume writing interviews by now. You should have set up your resume writing so they can review your resume this week. They will give you your resume back. You'll be turning in your resume this Thursday. Uh, some of it can be very simple. If you already have a resume, I'm pretty sure most of your campuses are probably going to say, just send it to me. They'll review it, they'll sign off on it, and they'll send it back to you, electronically, or if you're at the campus, they'll hand it to you. Then you're going to, upload it, take a picture of it, upload it. Your campus can help you with that if you don't know how to do that. Turn in a signed copy. If you do not turn in a signed copy, I'm just going to send it back to you and say, please get this resume signed. You are not turning in your resume as an assignment. You are turning in a signed copy saying that Career Services has had an opportunity to review your resume and they are giving it a thumbs up. The reason why you want Career Services to give your resume a thumbs up is because they're the ones that are going to be assisting you with securing your first job, hopefully, and they need to see your resume. Like, you don't want them seeing your resume at the last minute and you're about to graduate and they're like, what is this, right? So they also sometimes promote you while you're in school. So they need your resume on file. It really does not make sense for you to put yourself, behind the curveball and not let them have your resume, because other people let them have their resume. Like, you're all trying to graduate and get a job. So why would you leave yourself out of that by not ensuring that Career Services sees your resume and has it on file? So the whole point of them seeing your resume and signing off on it is because you want them to say, okay, this resume is good to promote. And so this class is just ensuring that you do that. So this Thursday, you will be turning in a signed resume. Is that good? All right. So today we're going to talk about resumes. Even though Career Services will, kind of give you the thumbs up for, it being a good resume. In this class, we're still going to talk about how to write one, because obviously you won't have Career Services in your career once you get started. So you're going to have to learn how to write your own resume as well. So we're just going to talk about what that looks like. So what is a resume? A resume is a written document. What does it do? It lists your qualifications. It also lists out your experience and your education. What is the purpose? To convince the employer that you are the right guy for the job, right? You obviously need to update your resume. Watch this. As many times as you apply for a job, you have to update your resume. And we're going to talk about why. Has anyone ever looked for a job on Indeed.com, LinkedIn, or any other job board? Anybody? We all have, right? Exactly. You may or may not have noticed that when you look at these job postings, they list out what? Can anybody tell me something we learned from last week that they list on these job postings? We kind of talked about them last week. There's 2 buckets. What are companies looking for? Skills, right? You're not looking for personality, maybe a little bit. They're looking for skills. Do they typically start with the technical skills or the hard skills? Have you ever paid attention? Give me a thumbs up if you've seen them start with technical skills first. Yeah. Normally, they're going to start out with the technical skills. Not to say that the soft skills are not important, but they're going to start out. We need this, this, and this, and that. Now, you may not have noticed that they follow up with soft skills. Have you ever noticed that? Why do they do that? Well, if it's a project-based job, teamwork, being on time, completing tasks, those are qualities that they definitely want you to have. If you're dealing with customers, they're probably going to have something about flexibility, good customer service, can-do attitude, right? They're also going to have soft skills. You need to pay attention to both. Why is that? When you apply for a job, when you see a job that you like, they are always going to have words identified in that advertisement that they are going to use to compare your resume against someone else's. And we call those keywords. Now, the problem is you don't know which of those words are keywords. So you have to just assume that all the words, all the main words in that advertisement are keywords. And you are going to ensure when you apply for that job that you make sure some of those keywords are also on your resume if you have that skill. Here's an example of a job posting. It says what? Essential duties and responsibilities. This job posting says that the duties include reading and interpreting blueprints and schematics to determine the specific welding requirements for a project. This is a welding. Setting up and maintaining welding equipment and selecting and installing torches. Look at these keywords. We don't know which ones are keywords, but here we've highlighted them for you. Selecting the appropriate welding process for a job, such as MIG, TIG, stick welding. Operating manual or semi-automatic welding equipment. Inspecting, maintaining to ensure safety, routine maintenance. Watch this. Let's go to the bottom. Working with other team members to complete projects efficiently and effectively. Staying up to date with new welding technologies. Every time you read a job posting, you need to look for the key words. Now, you would say, well, Ms. Taylor, how do I know what the keywords are? Well, it's your industry, isn't it? Isn't it your industry? Aren't you supposed to be a subject matter expert in training? Right? So you need to know how to identify keywords from your industry. I'm not a welder, so I may not be able to pick up the keywords for welding. Those of us in the VA program or the HVAC program, we're not welders, so we won't be able to pick up all the keywords. If you're a welder, you should be able to pick up the keywords. You should be able to say, oh, I have that, I have that, I have that. Let me make sure I've included that information in my resume. Why is that? My friends, most companies are not looking at your resume. Clutch my pearls. What do you mean, Miss Taylor? Most companies, especially large companies, are using automated tracking systems to review your resume. And what do you think those automatic tracking systems are doing? They've been programmed to do what? Look for keywords. And what do you think happens if that automatic tracking system does not pick up a keyword in your resume? Has anyone ever gotten that email that says, "Thank you so much for applying for this job. At this time, we've decided to move forward with someone else that strongly, matches our qualifications." That, my friend, is a computer reject. You have been rejected by a computer. 9 times out of 10, a human has never seen your resume. What do you mean, Miss Taylor? They're willing to just let go of this good thing that they have? Yes, because they probably got 200, 300, 500 resumes, and they're not going to look at them all. They're going to put them through an automatic tracking system, and the ones that pass the automatic tracking system gets looked at by a human. Why am I applying for all these jobs and I keep getting turned down? Why do you think? 9 times out of 10 is because you did not ensure that your resume had those keywords. Let me tell you, I've even tested myself. I too used to be, and I want to see who else is going to uh, uh, stand up and say, I am part of this 12-step program. Is there anyone else besides me that used to just send out their resume without changing it? Similar job, I'm sending out my resume. I don't have time to change my resume every time I apply for a job. Man, I'm sending it out to you. I'm sending it out to you. I'm sending it out to you. Thank you, Amy, for your honesty. I am a push the button queen. I don't have time. And then I would feel so good about myself. Oh, look at me. I applied for 50 jobs. Lazy. I was lazy. I don't know about Amy, but I was lazy. I did not want to do it, even though I teach it sometimes. I'm like, man, I'm just going to send it. But what I would do, Amy, I would get a little smart and I would just change my cover letter. Now, I will say this, by changing my cover letter and making sure that my cover letter included some of those keywords, it did help. It does help. But when I make sure my resume has those keywords, I can tell you, and I'll be honest with you guys, it's the difference between me getting a job interview in 3 months to 3 days. And I'm not lying to you. When I take the time to do what I'm supposed to do and put those keywords in my resume and on my cover letter, I get calls. When I'm lazy, I don't. Unless someone, because what's happening now, I'm playing a game, right? I forget though that odds game people talk about, but now I'm playing a game of this company is going to have a prudent HR person who's going to read my resume and see, oh my God, this person really is highly qualified. Because I know I'm highly qualified, but I was too lazy to change my resume. And my resume is going to be written based on what? Based on maybe my last opportunity. Go ahead, Amy. We're not, Amy, did you want to say something? You're off mute, but we can't hear you. Can anybody else hear Amy? Sorry, Amy, we can't hear you. So, you know, you're doing yourself a disservice by not doing those keywords. Does anyone have any questions on that? Amy, I'm not sure if you have a question. I'm going to take you off mute and see if you're off mute. Can you say something? It was an accident. All right. So you may say to yourself, well, Miss Taylor, how do I make sure those keywords are there? Well, this is where you're going to work with career services and, reading in chapter 7, it talks about keywords and, just for example, if you go back to that welding job description, if you work in welding, you probably do way more than what that job description outlines. But sometimes it's difficult to know, what do I put on my resume? What do I put on my resume? This, you know, teacher, Ms. Taylor's telling me to have a resume ready. Why do I have to have a resume ready if I'm just going to have to create a resume for every job? Well, your resume that you want to have ready is kind of like a template, and you have to adjust the template for each job. So think of it that way. And sometimes, what one company may want may be totally different from another company, right? So let's think of an example. If you're in HVAC, welding, or um, um, electrical, working at a residential company like a Sears and Roebuck. I don't know if anybody remember when Sears used to have repairers and they go out to your house and fix things like washing machines or whatever. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Let's say you go and doing residential repairs. It's totally different from working for a new construction home builder. The skill sets are different, right? So what the front-facing customer service type job is looking for, besides maybe your technical skills, and even with your technical skills, it may be a little bit different in each of your industries, welding, HVAC, or electrical, than if you work for a home builder. Does that make sense? So you still will need to adjust your resume based upon what their needs are, because what one person needs for electrical may be something totally different. Or if you're going to work for, like the airport, right? If I'm electrical and in the airport, what type of electrical do you think you're going to use? Right? Probably a lot of low voltage stuff, CCTVs, securities, that type stuff, right? As opposed to you going to work for an electric company. Y'all get my point? Give me a thumbs up if you understand my point. So your resume has to adjust. Or else it's going to be like, someone's going to look at your resume and be like, what is this? This is nothing to do with what we posted. And they're going to check it. So you don't want that drama. So when you do your resume, there are different sections that you want to have in your resume. Clearly, you want to have a heading. Now, the second one is something that I see, sometimes I see, sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's called a summary, sometimes it's called a qualification, sometimes it's called a profile. Sometimes I haven't even seen it. I think it's very important that you have some type of summary at the top of your resume. A lot of automated tracking systems will comb through that summary, or they'll look for the summary to look for those trigger words. And if you don't have a summary, I mean, that's just because what if you didn't really put some of those trigger words in your resume itself? Like maybe you give a brief summary of yourself and it has those trigger words. So the ATS system, because maybe within your experience, there wasn't a place to put every little trigger word. Your summary is a good place to capture some of those trigger words, like team player. Maybe you don't have any place in your work experience to talk about to being a team player, but you can put that in your summary. So the ATS system will pick up that trigger word, right? So I think summaries are, important to have. Many HR people will look at that summary almost like a cover letter to see, okay, is this resume even worth me digging into? Let me look at this summary, and they're looking for keywords. So I always say have a summary. Having a skill section is optional. It really just depends on the type of field that you are in. If you're in a technical field, the more technical your field, the more likely it is a good idea to have a skill section. But that's not always relevant for everyone. Clearly, your experience section is going to be the most important, and we'll talk about that. And then obviously your education. There's some other optional sections, but that's volunteers, certifications, things of that nature. If it's relevant to your industry, and once you get into your industry, you'll start to see what is more common than not with how people are promoting themselves, right? But for your heading section, clearly you want to have contact information about you. The one thing that is a little bit different from what we used to do back in the day is putting our address on our resume. My friends, do not put your address on your resume. Unfortunately, we live in dark times, my friend. And there are people that post fake jobs just to steal people's information. Not that they were going to show up at your house, because I know you're thinking, I wish they would, but we're talking about stealing identities. And the more information you give people, the easier it is for them to steal your identity. So now we recommend only putting like your geographic location, because that will be important for certain companies, right? If a company is in Tampa and you're in Tallahassee, that could be an issue for them. But if they're in Tampa and you're in Orlando, maybe not so much. So companies do want to know where you're located, right? But they don't need to know your address. So don't put your address on there. But what you can do is put other platforms, social media platforms on there to give them, more of an opportunity, sometimes an even better opportunity to get to know you, because if they can look at your profiles, your LinkedIn accounts, as well as have your phone number and your email, that's good too. Some people don't even put their phone number on their resume if they're posting it onto like an Indeed.com. They only put their phone number if they're sending their resume directly to the company. I say use your discretion. I actually think that's a good way to do it, just to try to protect your identity, right? But clearly you want to have a heading. Again, the summary section, it gives them a quick glance of your qualifications, right? Focusing in on your strengths and your skills. Very, very important. We are also going to use your summary, and I would ask that you work with career services to include a summary on your resume, because you are going to be using your summary to build what we call a personal brand statement, which we'll talk about this week. How many people have a summary, a profile, or qualifications on their resume already? If you have a resume already. Okay, good. So keep your resume handy. We will be talking about this week, I think starting tomorrow. And we are going to use your summary section. We'll also use your summary section when we do our LinkedIn. So if you have one already, just go and look at it really quickly. We'll talk about what that looks like. And and like I said, even though career services is assisting you with creating your resume, I mean, tip is really a template, and you can change your resume. You're going to need to change it anyway when you apply for a job. And we can tweak these summaries, right? So even if your summary doesn't look exactly like what I'm talking about, you can always go back and tweak it, right? All right, again, skills is a good place to put both your hard and soft skills. Most times it's just your technical skills, I'll be honest. They ask that you keep it in a bullet format, 2 columns, not too long, because it's not a lunch menu, guys. You don't want to take, I say don't go more than 3 or 4 lines, and make sure they're really important skills, right? If you're going to do it at all. Your education typically will have your school and the what you graduated with, the degree, and then the year you earned it. Make sure that if you do put your education, you put the school, that you put the city and state. Some companies want to verify, believe it or not. I know this is hard to believe, but do you know that people lie about their education? Some people will say they went to ABC University. Yeah, people do that. They did it a lot back in the day. I know. clutch your pearls, but people lie. Like you would be astounded on the type of things people lie about that luckily I've never even thought to lie about. But companies do want to verify that you've actually attended a real school. So they like for you to put the school and then the city and state that the school is, right? And then you follow that up with what degree you had and when you acquired it, right? Let me just let this person in. All right. So when it comes to experience, now this one is a big deal. Yes, for the same reason you want to include the company and their city and state. Um, Sometimes people don't put the city and state, but definitely the company's name, your position, and then the dates that you worked for them. I follow up with a brief paragraph on my job description. That's what I do. And then I follow that up with at least 3 bullet points of how successful I was at that job. If I were an HVAC person, I would write a brief summary of the work I've done at that job in HVAC. If I worked at let's say I worked at a new home builder, I would say, while working for ABC Construction, you know, uh, you know, did all the prep work for, new homes and whatever I did, running conduit, whatever y'all do, right? I would talk about that like a brief little paragraph. And then I would go into 3 accomplishments, right? Um, did outfitting for over 50 housing units within a 90-day period, meeting a 100% satisfaction rate. You want some type of accomplishments. The worst thing you can do is write a resume and just copy and paste your job description, which I see people do. Why is that an issue? Well, Miss Taylor, it does have some of the trigger words. Yeah, it does, but it doesn't say how well you've done the job. What is going to keep you from, from just being, part of the pack? You want to stand out. So you have to let people know how well you did at that job. Yeah, here are the key words. Yes, I did this. You're applying to go work at another home builder. Yes, I work for a home builder. Yes, I did this. But guess what? Here's how well I did it. I got through 50 houses, no defects. No, we had to go back and the customer was unsatisfied and go back and fix it. That's a big deal in new construction. Anybody ever worked in new construction will tell you. That's letting them know that you do your job well, right? Not just, oh, I did the job. So every job description should have some type of accomplishment bullets in it so people know how well you did it. Does that make sense? I hate to see resumes with just little bullet points. I did this, I did this, I do this. Like, what is this? A lunch menu? Tell me how well you've done it. Now, when it comes to how your resume should look, if we look online, we probably have seen all these different resume looks, right? The most traditional resume they call a chronological resume or a timeline resume, which basically means that you list out your jobs that you've held from your most recent job to your earliest job. Most companies don't want to see more than 2 pages. So they say don't go back more than 10 years. If you've ever worked, unless you've only worked for one company or 2 companies, it may be okay to go back further. But if you worked for several companies in the past 10 years, they say, okay, we only need to see 10 years worth, right? Some companies are getting really big on that. But that's what the chronological resume looks like. Some resumes have what we call like a skills type of resume where, and you'll see it a lot in technical, like IT type jobs where they'll list out, like I may say, all the coding I can do, the coding applications. And then I'll talk about, I've coded with SQL, I've done Python, I've done this, I've done that. And then right under it, I'll list out the different companies I've done it for. Because in tech in IT, sometimes the ability is more important than the company that you worked for, because in certain jobs, coding is coding, right? Now, it does differ in terms of, the type of project that you worked on. But in the IT industry, sometimes people do skills-based resumes. You won't see it too much in other industries. And then a combination is kind of like you briefly list the skill, but then you dig into, instead of just listing the company, you give a blurb about what you've done at that company. These last two formats are not as common, but I do see them. It really just depends. Even in education, we have what we call CVs, which is a curriculum vitae, where it looks a little bit different from a traditional resume, because every industry kind of has its own thing. But for most of your industries, it's the typical chronological resume that they use, right? A lot of companies will ask for you to send them your resume in Word or PDF. Most times it'll be PDF. So that's simple enough. Your Word converts to PDF. Instead of you just saving as a Word document, you just hit save as and do the drop down and save it as a PDF. That, for one, it makes it easier for them to run it through their tracking system. And number two, it eliminates anyone making a mistake in changing your resume if it's in Word. All right. So non-traditional resumes are really LinkedIn, to be honest with you. I've heard sometimes companies will even request your LinkedIn. You may see it in job applications nowadays, because sometimes it's okay. They feel like, okay, let me see. It's like not having social media is like not having credit. People will tell you not having credit is just as bad as having bad credit because you don't have any credit. Well, not having a social media account is not good, because some people think, oh, I don't want to put myself out there. Well, a lot of people become suspicious when you don't put yourself out there, because they feel like, okay, well, how do I know that what you're putting on your resume is not a bunch of gibberish, and they are not going to all do background checks on you. Certain companies are not going to pay that, even though a background check doesn't cost that much money. But they feel like when you do post online, that, obviously you're posting for everyone to see, oh, I worked at, ABC company, and most people are not going to lie online. So they like to see that they like to verify you, and they tend to have a bit more trust in what you're saying if you do have a social media presence. So there you go with that. All right. And some people call that virtual resumes, whatever. Clearly you want to check your resume. Now, because you will be changing your resume out to make sure those keywords are there, sometimes you can make mistakes. I've done it. I've sent the wrong cover letter. I've sent the wrong resume, because if you're, not paying attention, or maybe, when you're looking for a job, you're sending out multiple, you make mistakes. I have made many mistakes, so you do want to take your time and make sure you're sending the right resume to the right people, and it's error proof and blah, 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 right? So you want to make sure that you're doing that. There's so many different programs nowadays that you can use to ensure that your writing is done well. But that is going to be important. All right. When it comes to professional references, I will tell you, I was very late in the game when I realized that people don't do professional references. I had this one person tell me, and I'm just so shocked by it, I'm going to repeat it. And they were a professor. She was like, oh, I just use my ex-husband as my reference. I'm like, what? I've never done that day in my life. Like, what? You don't have a real reference? What? My friends, part of networking is building a network so that you can have a real professional reference. People know the difference. I don't know why people, but that's that mentality of, I guess, just whatever. You want to have professional references. This is why networking is so key. Once you build your career and you're gaining these references, you want to have professional references. Make you a separate sheet, 3 different people. They will change as your career progresses. But make sure you at least have 3 references. You don't want to put their personal information on there either without their permission. Stick to their company information, company phone number, company email. And once you've gotten to the interview stage where you have to submit your references, just make sure you let your reference know that. What I always do is I will let my reference know, hey, I just interviewed. Here's a job description. Here's what I'm going for. If they ask questions about, me with you, my skills, focus on that project that we did, blah, blah, blah. I always give my reference, some context, so they'll know what to say and how to say it. I don't tell them what to say. You don't get to see what they've said, so clearly you want to be able to trust the person, someone that actually knows your work. But, keep that on a separate sheet. Most times it's just 3 references they'll ask for. So always keep in your mind, always want to have at least a decent enough relationship with, your colleagues that you can have at least 3 referrals. It doesn't always have to be your supervisor. Most times they don't even ask for a supervisor referral. Nowadays, they just want business referrals. All right. So those were the professional reference. And in the book, it kind of gives you an example of what it looks like. Again, stick to non-personal information unless your references told you it's okay to give out their phone number and their personal email. All right, my friends, that's it for today. Then here is your question. You will be doing some research on keywords, so really pay attention to this assignment today. And it tells you to do some research on 3 different job postings. And I think you have to post the link to those jobs and then highlight some key skills that these 3 different jobs have. So if it's a welding and you found 3 different jobs and they're all telling you that they want you to be able to do, MIG or TIG, then put that down. If they're all saying they want you to have project team management, then put that down. So you're looking for 3 different jobs. You have to copy the link to where you found the job and the common skills, 3 hard, 3 soft. Does anybody need me to show them what I'm talking about? An example? Y'all got it? All right, all right. Well, here's your participation for today. And thinking about that, I want you to list 3 unique things about you that you learned. 3 unique different things about resume that you learned today. Be specific. If you didn't learn anything from me, I'm sorry. You can still get it from the book. So from the book, chapter 7, or from the live session, 3 things that you learned about resumes today. That is your participation question. Please remember, guys, to get the participation question done by 12:30. 12:30, all right? If we don't have any questions, I will see you guys back here tomorrow. Have a great day.